Okay, let me move. Hi, classroom that's not here, if you're online. I'm gonna move the camera. Actually, can you slide the camera, like, maybe rotate the camera itself? No, the other direction. Now you just showed everybody in the class. That's okay. There we go. That's perfect. I won't be in the frame, but maybe we can get the PowerPoint on there. Yes.
I think the test is wrong.
You think the test was wrong?
Yes.
Okay.
I remember specifically you saying some stuff verbally, and I recall it so perfectly. And there was a question on the test. So I put what you said and like this.
What was the question?
Yeah. If I see it, I'll remember.
Yeah, you'll have to remember. You'll have to tell. Oh, look, this is the wrong one. Dang it.
Come on, Donna. I don't know.
Find the question and email me.
Okay.
Okay, so what were we talking about when I said I was going to get this back online?
Oh, the notes.
The notes. Yes, the notes. If you remember that schedule I gave you, there's like 2, 3, 4 days for each topic. The notes are going to cover that whole time period. Now, like the British North America ones, if the stupid thing will come on. I'm sorry I called you stupid because you did come on. When I put them, because the ones I'm posting on Blackboard, I make into a PDF form. It's just easier. But I had to do it in 2 parts because they were so long. So you'll have to print, or you'll have to adjust that for that. You know, sometimes they're split, and sometimes it's where I stop, and sometimes it's not. But you will get the whole set of PowerPoints for each topic. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So find this little doohickey, and we can start.
So since we're doing hybrid classes, are we meeting on Friday?
Yes. Well, okay, so I messed up the schedule, and the other class decided for y'all. I know, but when I laid out the schedule, I went every other day. You know, class, blue group, gold group, blue group, gold group. I forgot about Labor Day. And y'all's group only got, they have 5 days, you had 4 days. But then y'all have Labor Day. So now y'all have 3 days. So don't come on the 6th. I won't be here. But we will just look at those dates I sent you. I thought about redoing it to even it out, but the other group's like, no, that's too confusing. Just stick with the dates we have. And if you want to come to class on a day that is not your group, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's only 12 people in here right now. Theoretically, we're supposed to be able to put 18 in this room. So if you're online, or if you don't like to go online and listen to the lecture, you want to be in person, just show up. Odds are there's automatically 1 chair in every room because the class is of 34, so that's 17 and 17, and I can put 18 in a classroom. So just show up. We'll find you a seat, unless everybody shows up, and then I'll have to get mean. But for the most part, if you want to be here, there's going to be a seat. There's either going to be somebody who's literally, actually sick and out, or they didn't get up and come to class. So, usually you can find a seat. Okay, so what we talked about on Monday, and because I don't actually write my lectures out, the lecture will be slightly different because it just will be. Before we can talk about British North America, we've got to talk about Britain. And I will use Britain, England, United Kingdom, all kind of interchangeably. And what I'm talking about unless I specifically say Scotland, Wales, Ireland, or say I'm just really honestly talking about England, I'm talking about this area here. This is the United Kingdom. This originally is England, Ireland, Wales, and Scotland. I may have those two flipped. But it was originally 4 countries. Under Queen Elizabeth, it's going to become 1. And I will, I use the name kind of loosely. So just know that unless I specifically say one or the other. But in talking about getting us to where we can get across the ocean, we've got to start with religion. You wouldn't think in a history class you'd talk about religion, but you talk about religion a lot in history classes. We've talked about it already with the Spanish and the missionary system, but religion was very central to life in the 16th century. It was central to it before, it's going to be central to it after. It is really only going to, and religion is still central to a lot of people's lives, but not in the same way it was in the 16th century. Life literally revolved around the church. And up until 1517, we're talking about the Catholic Church, at least in Europe. It was very much an age of faith. Social life involved prayer, worship, festivals, ceremonies. There was a very strong belief in the occult, in the supernatural, in heaven and hell, demons, angels, witches, devils, magic, miracles, the occult. All of that combined within the church. Hell was a real place. That if you were a bad person, you were going to go and burn forever. Heaven was where you wanted to go. There were real witches who were bent on, doing witchy things and being evil. There were demons that had to be exorcised. There was a very strong belief in this. And that there are still people who believe in it now, but it was very central to life. You would find more believers then than you would now. There was a lot of collaboration between the church and state. A lot of rulers claimed that they ruled by the grace of God, by the power of the Pope. Heresy and blasphemy were not tolerated. You didn't speak out against the church. Death was usually, death or disfigurement would be the penalties for that. People took their faith very seriously, and they were willing to die for it. We have the Crusades earlier. They were more than willing to die for their faith. But things are going to change. People are still going to be willing to die for their faith. They're just going to change faiths. On October 31st, 1517, Martin Luther, a German monk, a priest, and a professor, posted 95 theses on the door of the Wittenberg Chapel. That's Martin Luther. He was very critical of the Catholic Church. He believed a lot of the Catholic practices were wrong. Let's just go with the word wrong, particularly the sale of indulgences. So, indulgences were basically bribes. So if you had a loved one that died, and you wanted them to get to heaven, for sure you wanted them to go to heaven, You pay the priest. You give him a little gold. That'll ensure that your loved one's soul gets to heaven. It kind of goes back to the Greek myth, the Greeks and the river Styx and putting gold on their eyes. But Martin Luther says, like, no, it says in the Bible that the only way to God is through is through his grace, through his son, Jesus Christ. There's nowhere in here where it says, hey, I can slip 500 gold pieces to the priest and get into heaven. Instead, what Martin Luther professed was a priesthood of all believers. Because if the only way to get into heaven was through God's grace, through his son, why do I need a priest? Now, Martin Luther was not trying to split the church. Martin Luther was trying to fix the church. Let's look at these 95 points and see what we can do to make it better. Let's stop paying indulgences. Let's, do a few things different. What happened, though, is people took this to its logical end. Well, if I don't need a priest to get into heaven, why should I be Catholic? I'm going to follow this guy, Luther. And he is the father of Lutheranism. He did, like I said, it went way farther than he planned. He did not plan to be the father of Lutheranism. He planned to be a good priest, a good monk, fix the church he loved. And instead, in 1821, he's excommunicated by Leo X. But this split breaks Europe into two parts. You have Protestants and Catholics now. The Catholics who believed as Catholics believe, and the Protestants who were protesting this belief. And this is going to spark a series of wars, a series of religious battles. And people, like I said, were more than willing to die for their belief. I'm going to take this off. This is driving me nuts. I don't feel like y'all can hear me or understand me. For example, just in France, between 1562 and 1629, there are 9 civil wars fought over religion. 2 to 4 million people die out of a population of 19 million. That's a lot of people over, are we going to be Protestant? Are we going to be Catholic? Why can't we all just live together and be happy? Actually, nobody wanted to live together and be happy. You either wanted to be one or the other. That is how strong religion was. This movement is going to spread through Europe. It's part theological debate, part political movement. It's part catalyst for social change. It causes civil strife. It's going to play a role in colonial expansion and in imperial warfare. One of the first to kind of take up the cause is John Calvin. Calvin was a French scholar who fled to Geneva. He's going to put forth the idea of predestination. Predestination means that before you're born, before anyone is born, God knows whether you're going to heaven or hell. You are predestined from birth for one or the other. And there's nothing you can do in your lifetime to change that. That is the nuts and bolts of predestination. Now, it's a little bit more subtle than this in its application. Because John Calvin, as he explains, says that while you're predestined either to go to heaven or hell, because of that, your actions will reflect your status. So if you're one of the chosen, well, then you're going to be a good person and you're going to act like a good person. So I should be able to tell from your actions whether you're going to go to heaven or going to go to hell. We're going to pass it around. So if you behave like a good person, then you're gonna, everybody's gonna assume you're going to heaven, right? So it becomes a social construct because nobody wants to be seen as bad. But again, if you take this to its logical conclusion, if I'm predestined to go to hell or heaven, it doesn't matter. I can do whatever the heck I want. I could murder everybody. I could steal. I could take candy from babies. But because of the social construct around it, you don't do things like that. Not only that, they are going to punish you in your, human lifetime if you do bad things. But there are going to be some, not a lot, but there are some people who will take it to that conclusion that it doesn't matter what I do on earth, I can do whatever I want. But then there's others, like Calvin, that are going to use this to kind of keep people in line. So Calvin is going to be the head, the churches that he starts are the German Reformed Church, the Dutch Reformed Church, the Presbyterians in Scotland, the Puritans in England, and the Huguenots in France. Now, if you notice, he flees France because during one of these civil wars, they're going after the Protestants, and he wants out. In England, things get a little weird. England takes it personally. The Protestant Reformation in England sort of becomes an outgrowth of situations rather than a theological debate. Actually, at first, Henry VIII gets commended by the Pope for refuting Martin Luther. He stands up for Catholicism. Well, that's good and fine until Catherine of Aragon, his wife, doesn't have a son. And what kings normally do in this situation, you're not having a son, you want an heir, is you get an annulment. An annulment means the marriage didn't happen. Real people can't get an annulment at this point in time, once the relationship has been consummated. But kings could. Obviously she's had a child, they had sex, it had been consummated. But normally for a king, that's no big deal. In this situation, it was a big deal because Catherine of Aragon was related to Charles V, who was the King of Spain. King of Spain rules over Rome, over the Vatican City. Even though he doesn't rule the Vatican City, he is very important to the Pope. Pope doesn't want to hack him off by upsetting his sister and allowing the annulment, so he refuses the annulment. Henry has to stick with Catherine. So Henry's like, no, we're not going to be Catholic anymore. England will be Anglican, a whole new religion. The Anglican Church, at least in the very beginning, was basically the Catholic Church without the Pope. They kept all the vestments, the priests, the archbishops, the saints, all of that stayed the same. Mass was still in Latin. We're just not going to be Catholic. He marries his mistress, Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn has a daughter. So Catherine's daughter is married, born in a Catholic relationship to a Catholic mother, will be raised Catholic. Elizabeth is born to Anne Boleyn. I don't know if Anne Boleyn was Catholic or not. It doesn't matter because Henry VIII declares her a bastard child. You can't be a bastard child and still be Catholic. So just leave it right here. I'll get it. She is sort of disowned, but Henry VIII provides her a very good education. She's still his daughter. You can't erase that. He moves on, eventually has a son, Edward VI. Edward and Mary become the first two heirs to the throne after Henry. And it gets ugly. No, I said Mary did. The son will come first. So Edward VI has been raised in the Anglican Church. He's Protestant. He is very Protestant, and he goes on a binge of expelling all Catholics out of England. A lot of people die. He dies. His sister Mary comes to the throne. Mary's Catholic. What?
I was gonna say, how did he die? Like,
I don't know how he died. I would have to Google that or look it up. He was not murdered.
Oh.
Yeah, he just passed. So Mary comes to the throne. Mary's Catholic. Mary wants to get England back with the Pope. So now all the Protestants are persecuted. So you have two very bloody reigns. Mary dies. Again, I think natural causes. I don't think she was killed. And Elizabeth takes control. Elizabeth was the only one who seemed to have a little bit of a brain. Like I said, she had a first-rate education. She was a smart girl, even though she's 25 at this point. She takes control in 1558. But she brings in her own version of Protestantism. She's not Catholic. She can't be Catholic. She changes the Anglican Church, gets rid of the cult of saints, gets rid of the Latin Mass, replaces it with the English Book of Common Prayer. So services are now in English. She allows clergy to marry, but they keep the vestments. They keep a lot of the trappings of Catholicism, the formality of the rituals, the jeweled crosses. And that's not going to sit well with some of the other English Protestant religions. Okay, we are going to actually skip this slide because we talked enough about the Spanish. We are going to take a quick detour and talk about the French for just a moment. Because now that we've got Elizabeth on the throne, we're getting ready to get into British colonism. But before we can do that, let's talk a little bit about some other people. Now, we've already mentioned that Spain is the ruling imperialistic country at this time. They got there first. They found the gold. Everybody else is interested, but they have all these other things going on. So the French are going to be the first to pose a serious threat. In 1524, Giovanni de Verrazzano, on a mission for the French king to find that fabled passage to Asia, they won't give it up. They just won't give up the idea that somehow you can sail west around the world and get to Asia from England or from, the west, from Europe. Sorry, East and West are hard for me. Instead of finding that fabled passage, they find Cape Fear, North Carolina. It's not Cape Fear, North Carolina at this point. It's just a landmass.
How do you know
They have already traded. They've been trading with Asia for quite some time. As we talked about, China was the biggest world power. China had actually initiated a lot of trade throughout the world. They had ships that would come around, go south, I don't have a good map, go south of Africa and come up the coast. There was overland travel to Asia, particularly through like Turkey and the Ottoman Empire. I know I keep looking at that map, and that map is not what we need. But you could come down this way through Greece and across through Turkey and get into this part of the world over here. The problem with this is the area the Muslims control. And you had to pay so many bribes or fight so many battles to get through it, it wasn't worth it. If they could find a sea route where you didn't have to mess with people, it would be perfect. And that's what started all of this, is finding this sea route. And no, they will never find the fabled Asia Passage because it doesn't exist. The American continents are pretty dang big. They really block the way. Eventually, we get the Panama Canal, but that's not going to be until the 1900s. Okay, so Verrazano finds North Carolina. He kind of floats up and down the coast until he gets like as far as Maine. Then he goes south and he ends up getting eaten by the Caribs. In 1541, Jacques Cartier explores the Gulf of St. Lawrence, goes upriver as far as present-day Montreal. He even establishes a short-lived colony near Quebec, but he doesn't get to do a whole lot. And then Martin Luther posts, in this time period, now you're getting the results of Martin Luther posting his thesis. We got to take a time out for all of those civil wars. And they're not going to start again really until the early 1600s when Samuel Champlain, who becomes the father of French North America, father of new, how did they put it? I don't remember now. I've gone blank, sorry. The father of New France, that's what they call it, will come and establish his colony at Nova Scotia, call it Arcadia. We'll hit this again when we get later after the Revolutionary War, when we run the Arcadians out and they swing back around and they end up in Louisiana. And now we call them Cajuns. But it's not really, French are their first threat, but they're not very active. The ones that are more active and more threatening, really, are the Dutch. The Dutch had actually been under Spanish rule. They had been Dutch, then they were Spanish. Through inheritance, Spain inherits the Netherlands. If you haven't figured this out yet, there's a lot of intermarriage between the royal families in Europe. Henry VIII couldn't get his divorce because she was related to the King of Spain. This is going to come up again and again. The Dutch become Spanish through a marriage. They don't want to be Spanish. They rebel in 1567. They won't win until 1648. But in the meantime, they're really a nuisance to the Spanish because they will not only try to colonize areas, but they turn to piracy. Now, piracy has been around for a very, very long time. This is kind of the piracy you see in Pirates of the Caribbean. The Pirates of the Caribbean is so sanitized that it would have to be. Those ships are much smaller than they look. And no one showered. You know, they were gross. But if you can't go and get the gold from where the gold's at, what's the next best thing? Steal it. Yeah. So you're not going to borrow. Yeah, I'll take a loan. And the Dutch really get into this. They call their pirates sea beggars. The English call theirs sea doggies. And they start attacking Spanish ships. Now, Queen Elizabeth is not over the Netherlands, but she encourages this. She encourages the English sea dogs, but she has to be careful because you don't want to really piss off the Spanish because the Spanish have the biggest fleet at this point, and they control the seas. And she manages for around 20 years to play this, to play this diplomatic game of, oh no, we're not going to war with you. We love you. Drake, hey, go give me a couple more Spanish ships. In 1577, Francis Drake sails around South America and she knights him upon his return. It's kind of hard to say she's not backing him. But she plays this off for a while. But things are going to come to a head. And again, it comes back to this family thing. So she has a cousin, another Mary. I think there should be a rule that no family should have more than one person with the same name. It just makes genealogy so difficult. But Mary was Queen of Scots. Mary is the granddaughter or great-granddaughter, great-granddaughter of Henry VII. So she has a legal tie to the English throne. But right now she's over Scotland. She is about to turn her throne over to her son, James VI. And Elizabeth starts hearing that Mary's making plans to have her assassinated so she can take the throne in England. These are cousin wars gone really bad. So in 1587, Elizabeth orders Mary beheading. Now, Mary not only is a cousin to Elizabeth, but she's related to the Spanish king, Philip II, who doesn't appreciate that Mary beheads his relative, and now decides that he is going to send the Spanish Armada and finally take care of this upstart English woman. The Spanish Armada was a fleet of 130 ships, 8,000 sailors, 18,000 or more soldiers, and they leave Lisbon on May 28, 1588, and the idea is they're going to sail up through the English Channel, basically saying, we're coming after you. They're going to go to the Netherlands, grab some more troops, and then come back and attack England. Elizabeth, only has about 100 ships, but they're smaller, so they're faster. They can maneuver easier. The English Channel is not very big. And you put, at this point, 230 ships in there. There's not a lot of maneuvering room. So you have an advantage if you have small maneuverable ships. Before the battle, I don't have to find the book. Elizabeth dons, I will read you this. This is so cool. So I would have shown you a video, except the last time I showed a video, I got an ugly note from YouTube because it was a clip out of that new movie, Elizabeth, the Time Warner one. I think it's Time Warner because that's who I got the ugly copyright infringement note. So there's the new version of the movie, then there's an old, like 1940s movie. But anyway, Elizabeth is going to go speak to her troops before the battle. So she puts on armor and she gets in front of the English forces and she said, "I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and a king of England at that." Sends him off to battle. And if you want to Google those, the new version leaves out the whole line about her being a weak and feeble woman. But the old version does not. And they're a great comparison. Because the new version, she's on a horse astride. The old version, she's on a side saddle, which seems more appropriate, except side saddles weren't invented. The type of side saddle she's on is not invented until the 1900s. Anyway, so they go to battle. A storm blows up. And between the maneuverability of the English ships and the winds and the waves, the Spanish are defeated. The greatest naval presence in the world at the time is no longer, and now the wind and the waves belong to England.
So that's who there's a company.
Same way we know now. You have spies, you have threats. It's kind of hard to sail from Lisbon all the way up the coast of Europe with nobody seeing you. Somebody's going to rat you out. So yeah, she knew they were coming. And they were prepared. And she commemorates a coin that says, "God blew and they were dispersed." And Philip's quote is, "I sent the armada against men, not God's winds and waves." But in a time of very religious, strong religious beliefs, this was seen as an act of God. This was seen as an affirmation of England. You know, God is approving of what they're doing. So we're going to wipe out the Spanish. I mean, they didn't wipe them off the face of the earth, but they defeated them, or God defeated them. And it is seen as this. So we are not going to get quite as far as we did last time. I'm going to go through this really quick because when we start on Friday, I might repeat some of it. So now,
We're coming on Friday? Gold Fruit?
no, y'all will.
We're online.
You're online on Friday.
Right.
You have, so in that first email I sent y'all, so I'll kind of go over this on Friday. We'll just stop here. In that first email, there's a schedule of dates. Just if you have the date that you're supposed to be here, other than the 6th, show up. And if you go online, and let's see if this group did it. When you're online, if you will please put in the comment section. So see how these guys put their names? That's how I know that, or you can, because it puts your name here, unless you have some, something like, I wouldn't know who that is without him putting his name there. But if it just say, you know, if it's already going to say your name, put hi, put good morning, whatever you want. Just let me know that you get online because that's how I'm going to take roll. Okay, and thank y'all that came online. We will see you on Friday. I'm going to end the stream now.